So, hello everyone. Welcome to Now Play This Festival. If you're just joining us on YouTube, maybe later, or just walked into the room, I'm super happy to sit down today with Albert Birney and Gabriel Koenig today, who made the Tux and Fanny game. And they're exhibiting the game as part of our exhibition this year, but aren't able to be here in person. So we're doing this series of conversations with artists, just kind of about their work. Yeah. Hi, Albert. Hi, Gabriel. Really happy you can join us. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Hello.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very happy to be a part of this and look forward to answering some questions and talking about it.
Hi also to Nick Murray, Now Play This producer, who's going to be playing the game in the background while we speak to each other.
Hello.
And is waving now, so very cool. Hi, Nick. So feel free to jump in at any time if you have questions about what's happening in the game. Cool. So yeah, let's just maybe get started. Maybe Gabriel and Albert, maybe you could just both kind of introduce yourselves a little bit and talk about your practice before collaborating on this game. Like, what kind of projects do you usually do? I know it's in like actually quite different areas. So why don't we start with Albert, maybe?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, my name's Albert Birney, and I guess I'm primarily a filmmaker. That's what I've been doing the longest. So I'd say that's what I am. And I've made a few films, including a animated feature film called Tux and Fanny, which predates this game. But yeah, I made that in 2019, and then 2020 put it out onto my Twitter that I'd love to make it into a video game. And the first person to respond was Gabriel. So
okay.
Yeah, we had met very briefly exactly 5 years earlier in Vancouver. I was at the time playing with a band, and we were playing in Vancouver, and Gabriel and I talked for a couple minutes, and I think he probably has a better memory of this than I do because he's reminded me of this, but I think we talked about making a video game in that moment very briefly. So yeah, it all kind of was coming together over many years. And yeah, the Tux and Fanny movie looks very much like the game. They're little pixelated characters. So to turn the movie into the game on my part was pretty easy. It was the same kind of drawing techniques and pixelated graphics. So yeah, that's my backstory. I'll let Gabriel tell his.
Yeah, I'm primarily a video game creator, I guess. I've been fully independent since 2017. So I released Jet O'Maro, and then I did Test Tube Titans, and then moved on to Tux and Fanny after that. And so before Tux and Fanny, I'd done mostly 3D stuff with lots of physics-based gameplay and procedural generation and stuff. So Tux and Fanny was kind of like a very different direction in terms of where to go with making games. But because I'm just one person, it was easy for me to kind of pivot and change whatever skill set I wanted to focus on. So it was a lot of fun doing something like Tux and Fanny, which was totally different, and also working with someone else, which was kind of my first time doing a proper collaboration, was so different from working on this solo games that I've done, because it's just having someone every day that you can talk to about ideas and bounce them back and forth and share your progress, and someone who's also equally invested in the project. It makes such a huge difference. Like it's hard to think about going back to working on something entirely solo, because it was just such a positive experience working with Albert on this game. It felt like we were just having fun with it every day.
Yeah, really cool. I think you can also feel some of that spirit maybe coming across. Did you know about the films, Gabriel? Like before?
Yeah, I watched Tux and Fanny, I think, when Albert first released it, and it was it was definitely one of my favorite films of 2019. I remember telling people about it that I'd just met and been like, oh yeah, watch this film, Tux and Fanny. You should definitely check it out. So as soon as I saw Albert was thinking about making a video game, I thought this is something I have to do. Like this would be incredible, just because I love the source material, and Albert seems like such an interesting person to work with. And yeah, like Albert said, we had met in Vancouver previously, and at the time I was just interested in any potential collaborations, but we did talk briefly about working on something in the future. So I'm glad it eventually worked out that way.
Yeah,
but it's
and
the
then
first. Sorry, it's also the first kind of games project that you ever worked on, or did you do something like this before?
yeah, this was the first. You know, I grew up playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and have a deep love for video games, and kind of rediscovered them at the beginning of the pandemic. We got a Switch, and so all of this was kind of aligning a couple months into the pandemic when I tweeted about trying to make a game. I never made one, but I felt like I had been kind of thinking about it my whole life. Like I remember as a kid, my friends and I would we would draw out Mario levels and send them to Nintendo Power in hopes that they would buy them from us. You know, these 10-year-old kids, like this is gonna make us a lot of money. We're gonna sell these Mario levels. So you know, I never made one proper, but it just kind of been building towards it. And then when I tweeted that, and we talked on Zoom for like half an hour, just kind of, you know, talking about what the project could be. That was like all we really did in terms of like pre-production. I feel like later that day we were already making it, like sending images back and forth, and I would send the pixels of Tux and Fanny, and then I'd get back on a Google Drive like images of them walking, you know, or little demos of them walking, and it was just like really quick. And I love that we didn't really like think about it too much. You know, we didn't go into like 3 months of planning or 6 months of pre-production. It was just kind of like, all right, let's start making this thing and see where it takes us.
Yeah, the whole process just kind of flowed naturally and organically. Like we never knew too far ahead in advance, and Albert was kind of designing most of the main game, and then I was kind of supplementing certain areas and providing insight where I could. But it just kind of all poured out piece by piece, and as we had ideas, we'd integrate them, which I think kind of fed into the game having a very almost chaotic, but also organic and just really playful flow to it, because yeah, we just kind of added things as we wanted to, and we didn't think too much about whether it was part of some larger picture or something. It was just like any tangent that we'd like to explore, we would go with it.
And the kind of overall design choices of having it kind of open worldy a little bit, or that you could switch characters at any time, is that something that was like just there from the start, or did you like iterate through different ideas on that?
Yeah, that was there from the beginning. The one thing, you know, the movie ends with, or the movie begins with Tux and Fanny playing soccer in their front yard, and a cat comes into their yard, and they bring the cat into the house, which then puts fleas everywhere in their house. So that was the beginning of the movie, and I knew that this game, I wanted to end there. So it served as kind of like a prequel to the movie. So therefore, it was like, okay, we've got these 4 kind of characters: Tux, Fanny, Cat, Flea. Those will be the 4 playable characters. And this whole journey should be for them to all come together in that front yard. You know, Tux and Fanny playing soccer, the cat infested with fleas showing up. So, yeah, it was just kind of like working backwards from there, knowing, okay, we've got these 4 characters. What are the kind of adventures they can go on that would get them to this place? And, you know, really being inspired by the games I played as a kid, like the King's Quest games and Maniac Mansion, which are kind of, you know, those like, they're like early open world type games in a way, or like they have this, you know, overview of these lands and these places that you can explore. And I just love the details in those games where you can like look at something and it goes to a close up, and wanted to kind of take that to the extreme where you can just keep looking at things and finding little secrets everywhere.
And I imagine there were a lot of points, Gabriel, when you were like whoa, this is like good idea, but we can't do that or something? Or were you like, no, I'm good for trying it?
Yeah, for most things, I tried not to say
Yeah.
no to any ideas. It was only if it was like a really big technical obstacle where I'd kind of try to steer it into a different direction or suggest how we might do it in a slightly more feasible way. But for the most part, I had done some improv classes previously, just before the pandemic, and one of the lessons there was that you don't say no, you just say yes and. And so whenever Albert had an idea, I kind of tried to take that mindset and just say, yeah, sure, we can do that, but what about something like this? So it was, yeah, it was a very interesting process, just like kind of taking every single idea that Albert had as someone who didn't make video games and trying to make that into something that worked in video game format, both technically and kind of in a way that made sense for the player.
Yeah, and I had no idea that Gabriel was saying yes to everything. I just thought like, wow, this is the best collaboration I've ever had. It's like any outlandish, crazy idea, seems to be totally on the table. So, like I remember I was maybe early on kind of testing this, and I was like, maybe we could put Moby Dick on the bookshelf, the entire Herman Melville novel Moby Dick, and like 2 or 3 days later, there it was sitting on the bookshelf, and it's just like, okay, great, like sky's the limit, dream big, anything can happen here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about some of the like elements, I guess, from the like film universe that you transferred, or like which parts are kind of set and then you just kind of were able to reuse, and which parts were kind of new. Like, I mean, what's striking to me is just this kind of multitude, of graphical styles in there, or of art styles that's kind of similar to the movies.
Yeah. So in the movie, it's primarily pixel, like 8-bit pixels. But then I would sometimes do stop motion and watercolor, and so that kind of set the tone of like, let's maybe jump around to different styles that you can play with as Tux and Fanny, but also specifically like these mini games is a way for us just to like kind of put everything we love about the games we grew up playing, all the different styles and art choices, put them into the game. Yeah, I'd say like some, Tux and Fanny in the movie have a house, and they have there's a computer and there's a TV. There's like certain elements that were that made their way into the game, but then I feel like the video game just was an opportunity to go, deeper into exploring like what their world looks like. Like there's a desert, there's the dark forest. You briefly go to it in the movie, but like now we get to explore it and see that there's goblins. And so yeah, it was definitely nice having like an existing world and these existing characters. But the video game was just an opportunity to kind of like go deeper into everything and make up new things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what strikes me really is kind of through this level of detail and kind of different aesthetics in there, that everything just feels so alive and I was wondering also if that's a sort of almost like a philosophy or an emotion that you were aiming for, or in general, I guess, like what kind of emotional landscape were you trying to create with the game?
That's a good question. I don't know if I don't know if we ever like consciously were like, well, this is how we want it to feel. It's more of just like Tux and Fanny as characters are very, exploratory and kind of curious and look at the world around them very closely. And I think often like, when you're a child, when you're children, that's how you see the world. And I think Tux and Fanny, when writing them, it's kind of thinking about how a child or how like an innocent person would just like see the world around them. And I think especially in like 2020, where we were in lockdown and the world kind of felt very small, and it was a way, like having Tux and Fanny and having this project together was a way to kind of look at the small details and to remember the beauty that's around us in the natural world, and especially with like a friend or friendship, like as we were getting to know each other making this game, it was like having this friend that was always in the computer that we could shoot ideas back and forth any time of day, you know, like kind of Monday through Sunday, it was like, just let's, you know, share ideas. And so it's like, in a way, we were both like, we were making Tux and Fanny, we were kind of acting like Tux and Fanny. And I think through that comes this feeling of aliveness, or magic and wonder for the world, and for friendship. But it wasn't like that was what we set out to do. It was kind of just like, let's have fun, let's play like kids play, let's, you know, make this giant game that is just like us playing in the sandbox and like dreaming big. And, you know, whatever, there's no bad ideas, let's like put them all in here. And you know, we'd still be making it if we hadn't kind of set a limit. I mean, it was just so fun. It was like, we could have, I personally could have made it forever, you know, just like this endless game that after 30 years gets released, and, you know, takes like hundreds of hours to beat.
Maybe question for Gabriel is also if you like had a feeling for how should we call it, like the level of frustration or difficulty that you're interested in for this project, because like I feel like there's like just such a softness in it, but without it being boring. I find this like a really interesting balance that you found there, and I'm curious like about thinking also about the little bit puzzly elements, or like the things you have to find, like how you landed on this level, or what you were aiming for in terms of difficulty.
Yeah, for myself playing games, I've over the years I've developed really little tolerance for games that don't kind of respect my time, or drag me through these difficult patches. So having a game that just kind of, it not necessarily was too easy, but just like held your hand and guided you in a way that respected your time was very important to me. And I think we did a lot of play testing with friends, especially the first act of the game, to really see what people would do, because the game is so open and presents all these different areas to the players so quickly. So finding a way to streamline that and guide the player in a meaningful way, that was, I'd say, a very important part of the process, especially as we started to wrap things into a more completed project. Just getting that feeling good and intuitive was very important.
Cool. I'm just watching what Nick is doing right now. He's
tea.
making some tea. There's so much going on. I find it very hard to talk and to look at the same time.
Speaking of respecting players' time, the tea making was originally going to be 2 minutes. When you're steeping, you have the mug and you're just dipping the tea bag into the mug. And that was originally going to be 2 minutes, but we ended up cutting it down to 1 minute, which still feels like a long time, I think, for some people. And they're just like, oh, I guess I can't do anything else right now. But I think that was one of the only times in the game where we actually blocked you from doing anything, and you're just waiting 1 minute. But I like that as a moment where you can just kind of like, I can't do anything right now, I'm just waiting for my tea to steep.
Yeah, and I just made some tea yesterday, and they recommended steeping for 4 minutes. So people should be very thankful that we only did a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're thinking a lot also in this festival about slowness and kind of speed of games also when thinking about love. So I think there's like definitely a lot of sensitivity for time in this one. I felt like while playing it. I want to ask a little bit also about the sound level, which is like really interesting, I think, also in the films. Like Albert, you chose to use like subtitles and this kind of Russian voices for everything. Like, how did you transfer that? Or is it's not real voice actors in the game, or is it?
No, so yeah, when I made the movie, I didn't have access to voice actors, so I just used my computer's voice, doing like a couple of Russian voices. And I didn't think too hard about it. I had just gotten back from Moscow at the time, and so I was just like really wanted to keep hearing the Russian language, and I had these voices. So then when we were making the game, it was like, okay, Tux and Fanny, these voices really are their voices now, so we need them in there at some point, or we need them in there in some way, but we're not going to have them speaking every single line. There's just so much that we'd have to record. So I think we just kind of like, actually, Gabriel, I think you did this, but you might be better to speak on how we got it into the game.
Yeah, I took a few lines that Albert had provided and chopped them up into just kind of individual syllables, and then the game just kind of randomly spits out a number of syllables based on the length of the dialogue, so that it kind of sounds Russian, but it's not. It's just gibberish. But I think it works well for the game version.
And
Yeah, these happy animals, these were old cigarette cards like that were in the public domain. That, you know, these would be collectible little cards that would come in cigarette packs at like the turn of the century. And I had actually printed these out and laminated them and given them to my nephew years ago as a Christmas present. And I still had these images, and I was just thinking, this is one of those things early on where I was like, let me see how much I can get away with here if I start giving crazy ideas. And then within a day or two, it was a functional little like slot machine. Happy animals.
I guess that's also generally part of your practice, right? To just really collect and assemble different references or
Yeah,
kind of aesthetic parts.
yeah, definitely inspired by like images and props. Like in my filmmaking in the live action realm, I so many ideas come when I'm like in a thrift store and I find some strange, you know, object, then I can like build stories and ideas around that object. So similar to this, yeah, like a lot of the books on the bookshelf, or yeah, just random little things come from like seeing some object or some digital image on some website that kind of becomes integrated into the game.
Oh wow, I've never made it to the roof. Oh yeah, to get the TV thing, I did go there.
Yeah.
So how's the reception been? Like, how have you been, like, what have you been seeing when people have played it, or did you like, were you surprised in some way how people reacted to it?
I think it was really pleasant to see how people reacted to it. We didn't really know. We thought this is a fun game, and from our friends who had play tested, they really enjoyed it. But it was so nice to see strangers picking it up and just embracing everything about the game and how it goes in all these different directions, and has so much heart to it. I think overall, like the reception's been excellent. We haven't had a lot of people pick it up, which has been, I think, the biggest disappointment. But the people who have played the game and engaged with it have really loved it. So I think we're just hoping that we can get more people. It's not an easy game to market, and I think that just by looking at a few screenshots of it, it's hard to tell how deep the game actually goes. So yeah, it's been a challenge.
Yeah, but I had never really watched people play games before on Twitch, and it was a great treat in those first couple months. And still, it happens every so often. We'll get a notification that someone is playing the game, or a couple friends, or some cases like couples are playing the game, and it's really been so exciting to watch them play and kind of take their time through the game and tell stories and go on little tangents. And I've never, with a movie, it's like you make a movie and then people watch it in a dark theater or on their own at home, and you don't really like, while they're watching it, there's no interacting or kind of you don't get to see how people react at every single moment as they're watching it. But within a game, it's like you can really see them go into the game and enjoy every little space and be surprised by this thing and get lost over here. And it's been really like I wasn't expecting that, or like how much I would enjoy that, being able to kind of like see all of the work we did kind of unfurl moment by moment with people.
And do you think you're going to be working on more games, Albert?
Oh, I would love to. Some days I'm like, more excited to work on games in the future than movies. It's definitely it like scratched the same itch that some movies does, but maybe scratch even more itches. So yeah, I hope the opportunity arises at some point to make more. This was my first time, and it was a huge learning experience, and I have all these ideas for like ways to do it hopefully even bigger and better someday. So it'll be fun.
Cool. And Gabriel, you're thinking of doing a movie sometime?
Yeah, I actually went to school for video production and film, so
okay,
I kind of went the opposite direction. But yeah, would love to, if it comes up, work on a film with Albert at some point or something. We'll see.
Cool. Maybe a question for Nick, who's been like really busy doing various things in the background. What are some of your favorite parts that you've just discovered now while playing?
I guess first off, thank you so much both for making this beautiful, weird game. Like, it's just wonderful. I think the bits that really kind of stick out to me are the moments where one character or the other says, oh, I remember doing this with Tux, or I remember doing this with Fanny, and you have to bring them together, and then something kind of joyful comes out of it. Really, really nice. And also the surprise of the very poetic script coming from the flea is perhaps my favorite moment. I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, that was fun trying to figure out. I think that came pretty early on, thinking about the fleas. It's like, you know, kind of going against what you would imagine the fleas would, how they would speak. Like the cat's very simple and broken sentences, and these fleas are like, you know, very dramatic. And I think that just comes from like we don't know what's going on in the animal world or in insect world, and you know, just because something is small and tiny doesn't mean that they have like they have gravitas or great drama happening in their lives. So that was fun.
Nick, while watching you play, I'm noticing that you're playing mainly with Tux or Fanny individually, and like I found myself like always running around with both of them.
Oh, what, bringing one with the other? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I guess
yeah,
like different styles. Yeah,
we saw people doing that where they would be kind of bringing them everywhere, and I guess the game is called Tux and Fanny, so they seem to do that. But I think whenever we would kind of speed run or test the game, it was like you could put them in opposite areas of the map once you get out of the house and the world expands a little bit, and it really like helps you to, it's almost like fast travel. You can unlock something here and then instantly switch over to the other character on the other side of the map and kind of do what they needed to be done.
The system of them following each other was also actually not something we really thought of until one of my friends was playing the game, and they were like, oh, it'd be nice if they could walk around together. And so that was just that one suggestion from a friend made me add that, and it was cool to see how many people ended up using that playing the game.
Yeah, I feel like you get a quite strong sense of togetherness, even like in a single player game, just from this simple trick kind of. Yeah, like for me it worked really well also. Yeah, nice. So maybe this is a good point to wrap it up. Thanks again so much for sharing your insights and showing the game at the festival. I think it's yeah, just really interesting how it connects also to the love theme in a like surprising way, actually. And yeah,
we should get into the dream sequence.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, you got to end on a dream sequence.
Let's see, you have a plan, Nick, of where you want to go. Oh, I have to turn the sound on outside. You know it.
Yeah. It might be a little bit noisy to go to bed.
Oh yeah, right.
Probably one of the darker moments of the game.
Yeah, pretty early too.
Yeah.
The cat and the flea, we weren't sure how they tied into the story. We basically added those two characters closer to the end. So it was kind of a puzzle for us figuring out how to integrate those characters into the main story and tie them meaningfully into ways where they cross paths. And we didn't want them to be totally separate adventures. We wanted them to be integrated with the Tux and Fanny story. So that was a fun challenge to figure out near the end.
That noisy bird was 100% inspired by a bird outside our window that was waking us up. To the point where we bought a fake hawk to put outside our window to scare it away. And yeah, these little figurines were from the movie. So this is an example of like, it was like, how can we include these little wooden Tux and Fannies? And it's like, oh yeah, they can be in the dream sequence.
Yeah, and it's a great example also of really the kind of collage style or the aesthetic completely switching.
Yeah, these teeth, I don't know where these teeth came from. I had them in a little bag in my house. I think they were props for a movie or something, but they just showed up one day and I still have them. I don't know. I think someone told me that they were like maybe canine teeth or something. I don't know. They're kind of weird, but they made it in. That house I got at a thrift store and painted. That was in the movie as well.
How are you feeling like being the house?
I think this whole section is inspired in a way that I don't know. It changed. It like my mind kind of expanded the first time I saw this, and I think it's brilliant. So I think it's maybe a weird connection to make, but it makes me think of kind of like really surreal kind of psychodramas, but like not quite in the kind of Lynchian way, but like, it makes me think weirdly of like Neon Genesis Evangelion, like the last 2 episodes of that where it just becomes like half an hour inside someone's brain. Yeah, it's great.
It's cool.
And now I'm a TV.
Yeah, and I have that TV actually right here. Let's see if it'll pick it up.
Oh, incredible.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
It's a little like Christmas ornament, but I've had it for years, and yeah, I have that shark here too. Actually, I didn't plan this at all.
Very good.
There's the
It
shark.
was fun. I think the dream sequence was one of the early things we added to the game that had a lot of kind of multimedia or very different style, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game of just being like, anytime that we want to move into a different style, we can, because the game is kind of creating a language for just presenting in whatever way that is felt appropriate, and that was really liberating. I think having that as one of our options to just have fun with the visuals and use whatever sources we wanted.
How did you find this balance between a kind of more narrative style and these kind of puzzly elements? Like, what was your kind of leaning into when you would add them, or what did you feel kind of made the story kind of move forward?
Yeah, I think it's another moment where we didn't really think about it too much. It was just kind of like knowing that they needed to inflate their soccer ball and they needed to all the things they needed to do in order for that to happen. Just kind of naturally the story came through. Like this, for example, is early on in their house. So it was like, okay, they've got this safe. They've got, what is it, like 5 or 6 numbers you need to find throughout the house, or 7 numbers, I forget, but 6 numbers. So it's just like, yeah, that's 6 different little puzzles that we'll have to hide throughout. And one of them will be in the dream. So, let's go crazy and surreal in this weird dream world, but it's all serving this, finding the number for the safe, which is furthering the story. So, I think it just kind of naturally developed. We had like epic Google documents where I would just kind of like write out the scenes and the stories and we would build them. And, there were moments, the mini games also were chances for us to kind of go on these little tangents and explore these other ideas and styles. And they didn't necessarily, some of them kind of push a story forward, but most of them don't. But yeah, I think it just kind of naturally all came together, and we just trusted that, like, because it's all in Tux and Fanny's world and it's them kind of experiencing it all, that it will feel cohesive in the end.
I'm really glad you mentioned the extensive use of sheets, I think it's important always to mention how much of video games are based entirely on spreadsheets.
Yeah. Yeah. So many.
And I was curious, Gabriel, if like this openness to really change game mechanics at any point, if that had kind of also technical consequences for you, or if you had like a certain way that you came across to just, I don't know, I guess keep an overview of the
Yeah,
different mechanics. So
like the main game kind of it grew and grew and became a little bit messy towards the end, but all the mini games and all the areas that felt kind of unique were just original code. And that was really liberating because it was almost like making a bunch of game jams or something in the course of making this larger game. And I find that starting code from scratch and just writing a new system was really fun. So even though we had like Tim Tooth being this puzzle game and stuff, it was like I just took 1 week, wrote like a match 3 type game, and that was then part of the larger game. But it was totally separate in terms of the code, and that was just a ton of fun for me, having all these opportunities to just explore and learn and write these mini games and stuff that that didn't necessarily weren't part of the main controls, and they were just kind of throwaway parts, but also made the game richer, I think.
yeah, definitely. I feel like there's really like an interesting expressiveness here, like, or it's a good example of how code can be expressive also, or like this difference between content and code just completely breaks down, right? And it just becomes one one thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I guess Nick, you'll be playing a little bit more. I'm also looking forward to dive back in. So yeah, big thanks to both of you for joining us today. This was really fun. We'll have this on the YouTube. We'll put the links to where you can find the game in the show notes below. And if you're at Somerset House right now, watching it in the event space, just head on over to the River Rooms, to the exhibition where you can sit down and play the game. So yeah, big thanks to Albert and Gabriel for joining us today, and see you soon.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Ciao.